The Darkest Hour. Gary Oldman in the house. Can we just have a moment for that right now? This is like a big deal. Joe Wright, one of my favorite directors, he's on the record saying he's waited 30 years to work with you since he saw Sid and Nancy. So let's talk about this. You're unrecognizable as you are sitting here in front of me to Winston Churchill in this film. What's that first step into figuring out how you're going to play this kind of well-known, iconic, much written about, covered subject?
Well, I think the first step is I've got a very squeaky chair. Is that all right?
I hear it. Yeah.
Is that the first thing is that you don't want to play it, and often we have to pay the mortgage and keep the lights on, and we're actors, and that's what we do, and we work, and then occasionally something will come along, like Darkest Hour, and the prospect of doing it is really scary. And then those are often the ones that are worthwhile, the ones that give you a little bit of fear and a few sleepless nights, because you say yes, I would love to do that, and then you lie awake at night going, oh my God, what have I done? What have I committed to? Would I ever? Can I do it? But then the work starts. Obviously, the first hurdle that presents itself is the physicality. I can't put 60 pounds on at my age. It's not. I can't mess with my health like that. So there was only one way to do it, and I happened to know Kazuhiro Tsuji, who was the makeup designer. He happened to be local. I thought he is the only man, literally the only man on the planet that could do this and make it work. And he's retired, so he's now a fine artist. But he read the script, I met him, and he said yes, so I dragged him out of retirement. So that was the first initial step. And then I must say that during production, I had a guy called David Malinowski and Lucy Sibuk, who were the people that applied and painted me every day. I needed to see Churchill looking back at me in the mirror to really, for me to have the chutzpah, to get up there and do him justice. And we found a lovely. There's a lot of Churchill. There's some of me. There's we found a good balance. So that was the first step, and then of course, as you say, there's over 500 books written about this man. Where do you start? So I located a historian, a Churchill expert, Larry Arnn, and he guided me to very, specific things to read, and you slowly start to build the character, because you have I had an idea in my head of it being British too, of who Churchill was, but some of that is influenced by people that have played him, and I pushed that all to one side and found, surprisingly enough, a great deal of footage, archival footage of him, and from that I then built. You start to sort of build, and hope that at the end of it all, you can pull it off.
You did. You more than pulled it off. I mean, well, Kristin said that she would rehearse. She went to rehearse with you, and then it was. She'd come back, and obviously you'd be at much earlier call time, and she'd be like, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not Gary, that's Winston," and here we go. We're off at the races.
Yeah. I was the first in, last to leave. I mean, some of my call times were 2:15 a.m. I mean, some of them were crazy.
Yeah.
But the time the rest of the cast came in and the crew were getting ready to do a blocking or a rehearsal, I was already dressed and done as Winston, so that the crew and Joe actually never saw me as Gary for
Wow.
3 months.
He only saw Winston.
Yeah, and so that kind of helped. The kick I got was some of the extras that came in and their reaction. And you know, I'd walk down the corridor to the set, and they would all sort of lean against the wall and nod and go, "Morning, sir." You know, it was one had a sort of. It was nice being PM for a while.
Yeah, not a bad look. If you're going to go through, you know, cumulatively 200 hours of hair and makeup, basically. Yeah.
But you know, you have to get into a kind of mindset for it. And I would say this to anyone who's maybe going to do it or contemplating doing it. But you've got to surrender to what it is. Mm-hmm. You have to find a place and a focus to what it is. You can't do a Darkest Hour and fight the process. Mm-hmm. You have to surrender to it, and if you do that, you'll have a great time. And I couldn't wait to be Winston.
Mm-hmm. Well, the world Joe creates is incredible. Just all the details and the layers and just the subject matter of what was happening this period of time that this film examines, I think, is amazing. And also, especially leading up to the big movie that we saw this summer, Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan's Another Brit.
Right.
It's almost a companion piece to that film.
Very much so. Mm-hmm. And we have, as you mentioned, Kristin Scott Thomas as Clementine, Churchill's wife. And I was reminded of a quote that the family were playing a game around the dinner table one evening, which was, "What if you weren't you, who would you be?" Mm-hmm. And it got to Winston, and he said, "Well, if I wasn't me, I would like to be Mrs. Churchill's second husband."
Oh, that's nice.
Which is very, very, it's a very touching thing to say. Mm-hmm. Let's put it this way. I think I'll be chasing this one for a while. Mm-hmm. The company, the crew, the experience, the writing, and it was a real absolute privilege to play him.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a privilege for us to watch it, and I'm glad Joe waited 30 years to do this one with you.
I'm awfully glad too.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he had to wait for me to grow up.
Yeah.